is the first thing that pops up. All right, whenever you're ready.
Let me stretch.
Okay.
Can I get my hormone shot before we go? I need some
Need to
testosterone.
panic. What's that traffic report about?
Delay factor. All right. Good morning, Columbus, and thanks again for joining us on Down the Garden Path. Down the Garden Path is your weekly show about landscape and other various things outside, presented to you by Greenscapes Landscape Company. Greenscapes is one of the most trusted landscape contractors of Central Ohio, now celebrating over 40 years in business. And if you have a project you'd like to talk to us about, please don't hesitate to call at 614-837-1869, or you can always email us at info@greenscapes.net. And today, helping us get through some of the listener questions that get sent in is Michael Morris. Michael, how are you today?
I'm fantastic. I'm excited to talk about this because this is winter related, and we finally got some snow, because I feel like the last time we were doing winter related, it was 50 degrees.
Yeah, last year there was not a lot of snow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even a couple weeks ago, we were looking out that back window, and I was trying not to watch somebody walking in shorts around the track while we were talking about what to do to prep your winter landscape.
Yeah, exactly. So if you have a question that you'd like to have answered on the air, we always encourage you to send those in to info@greenscapes.net, and we'll try to answer them best we can. Michael, what do we have on the show today?
Well, the first one is about snow management and snow management expense. Now, Greenscapes does do snow removal.
Yes, mostly for commercial. For our commercial clients, we do snow removal, which is great.
Now, how does that work exactly? Because if someone says, I want you to clear my neighborhood, will you guys do that, or is it limited to... I know that Mark does the property, I think it's the FedEx property, or it's FedEx, right?
I think so.
It's a huge, it's kind of like many football fields wide.
Oh, yeah.
And he says, like, he takes the truck home at night because he knows he has to do that, just in case. But he said it's, hours of getting that thing ready before people get there at 7, 8 o'clock.
Yeah, and that's how we got focused on commercial snow removal, because of, the size of our equipment and the size of our trucks. And then, it just takes so much longer that if we're on those properties, if Mark's out there all day, to get to residential properties is a little more difficult. To get there in a timely fashion, we don't want to tell someone we're going to be there and, we're going to be there tomorrow because we've been plowing this hospital for a day.
Which is probably more important than you getting to work to get ready to get your free coffee there.
Right.
So how many trucks do you guys have, though? I mean, if you're doing commercial projects, you probably have to have, 10 or 20 trucks?
Oh, I think there's 30 trucks. Everything we have has a plow.
How long have you been doing that, though? Because I know, Bill, we kind of touched on it. The first time that we ever spoke a few years ago was on a day where there was a lot of snow removal and all that. The only place I could get into was your facility, because it was completely plowed.
Right.
But, with all the equipment they've got there, I didn't know how many, trucks. That stuff, if we have a light winter, you guys are just sitting on trucks.
Well, it's all of our landscape and all of our equipment gets put out. So we don't have anything. We have equipment specific that goes on the trucks, but we don't have any trucks just sitting around waiting for snow.
Bill would not allow that.
No, he would not. But the guys take the trucks home, and so they can go right to
So they know it's coming.
Yeah, they know it's coming.
Okay. So as far as the snow removal, if someone's asking us, do you do residential? No, unless you live in Mark's neighborhood. Is a fair way to say it.
Right. Well, we have some people that we work with who take care of some of our residential stuff for us, so we can get you in touch with them.
So, but if they called you first, you would kind of handle that and put them in touch, right? That's cool.
Correct.
So when we're talking about snow, I know a lot of people are thinking they can't really do anything outside, and I found that's not the case. In a little bit of research, one of the things that seems to come up is hardscapes. People doing things with their hardscapes. Are there specific things that you guys design in a hardscape world so that people can enjoy being out there?
As far as the layout of a project, you can still do, as far as our work, what we can do is we do some stonework, some walls, and some specific stonework. We don't do patios in the wintertime because of the gravel's too frozen and it's too big of an area.
There's not a heated paver type situation you could You can't put it in, right?
Well,
like if it's snowing, you can't put it in, but you could have that as an option.
Yes, we have done that in the past where we had a client who had a sloped driveway, and we put a heated driveway underneath it, or a heating element basically underneath the drive lanes, so the driveway would stay warm and help to keep the ice off it because it was so steep.
But did you guys have to lay the blacktop or concrete to do that?
Well, we worked with the electrician to get everything. We did the base preparation, we worked with the electrician for the matting, and then put pavers on top of it.
I've seen that before, and I think that's a really cool element, but do people, I guess they don't really think about it during the summer when you're doing your projects, or spring, what you're going to do wintertime, because that is a feature you'd have to do when you're planting too.
Right. It all starts in the planning process, because to do a heated driveway, and the heated driveway is a rarity, but we've done more than a few heated walkways where, the one that we just did last year in Upper Arlington, the client had a hard time with mobility, getting around. And so he had, the driveway got cleared, but then there was a walkway, and the walkway sloped up to his front door, and that was heated. And it worked out very well.
What's the cost on that, though? I mean, that person definitely needed, but I think there are a lot of people like, I never want to shovel snow again. I want a heated driveway. It can't be cheap, right?
No, it's a substantial cost. And, there's the installation cost, which is one level, and then there's the cost to have that element turned on.
And tearing up what you have before, right? Because you have to build it from scratch.
Right, you have to start from scratch. It's not an add-on thing. You have to start from scratch. So the amount, when you flip that switch to turn it on, the amount of electricity is great.
And you love getting that phone call? That's what you're saying? If you could get like 10 of those today, you'd be good with it?
Oh, that'd be fine. And that's the thing, is we want to help our clients understand the cost of these things before we get into it. And then we don't want to get to the end. We do all this planning, and then, it comes time for the final approval. And they're like, oh my goodness, this is a lot.
How many people have backed out once they've gotten to that stage? I don't mean in just any project, but something like that requires electricity, or I know we talked about water features or water elements. When you they think the idea is so great, and then you go, okay, that's going to be an additional 10 to 15,000, and they kind of go, nah, I'm good.
Well, there was a client that we worked with, and we did a huge water feature, and it had a tremendous pump to it. And over time, he turned the pump off because of the ongoing maintenance cost of it.
But that's something that he could maintain, or Greenscapes?
Well, we maintained it, but he finally said, I'm tired of paying the electric bill and paying all these extra costs every year for the ongoing maintenance to keep the system running.
That's probably the same thing in an electrical situation, right? I mean, there's a minimum amount of money that you're going to have to spend on your electric bill anyway.
Right.
So even if you're not going to use it, might as well not even pay that bill.
Right. It's hard. That's a good point, that in all of our projects we want to talk about as we're going through things with clients, is all of our designers at Greenscapes, we want to talk about these long-term costs. If you do this planting, it'll be beautiful today, but what level of maintenance do you want to give it? Are you prepared to spend the time or the investment to pay someone to keep maintaining this landscape? So those are the long-term questions we want to work with clients.
As far as we were just talking about the electricity part of a heated driveway or that walkway, you get a lot of requests for low voltage lighting.
Yes, we do. We love doing lighting, and we're a little bit different at Greenscapes because we want to take the lighting and highlight the design we did. So we're using lighting very architecturally. We want to create hot spots and shadows and shaded areas. And some people have a little bit different view on that, where they want everything to be bright, everything to be lit.
You mean everything, kind of like everything is all in a spotlight, so you can see every single piece, versus the shading of how it kind of lays out? Because in the drawings, I'm sure when you're looking at it, you're looking at it from the artistic side more than this is functional and we'll just drop lighting on top of it.
Yeah, when you hire some people to come in and do lighting, they say, okay, we want to light this thing up, so they'll have 5 lights on the front of a wall of your house. Well, I'm going to do it in 2 or 3 because I want to highlight things, and I want the dark areas so we can get a contrast of shadow and light. And it's my goal to create those shadows in the light areas so you have some interest walking through a landscape at night, not just it all lit up like a parking lot. But that's where you create the interest, where you want to light this tree, you want to leave this area dark, you want to just do different things.
How do you come up with that? Because as you're the designer, I mean, every piece is different, right? So when you're looking at it, and you're looking at shading and certain fixtures that you want to like enhance. How are you coming up with that? Because I think people would be very interested, and I say this all the time. There are people in my life that have put in landscaping projects. They're not thinking of the lighting. They're thinking of what it looks like in a 2D picture.
Right.
You have to think of it in a 3D scale, right?
It's nothing. I wish I was so smart to have some formula to figure this out. But we start off with the areas of the walkway that need to be lit. Is there a turn or a curve? Is there a step? So we want to light those areas first. So just think about safety. So you see a light by a step, a step's there. Then it might get a little dark, and then you see another light, and then there's a curve in the walkway. So we want to start off with just the simple sort of the safety aspects of the lighting. And then if we have a tree, well, we can put some uplights on the tree to cast a shadow out in the landscape over here. And then there's some interesting elements on the house where we can do, say there's a neat stone feature in the front of the house. Well, let's put 2 lights over there. And then you look at how the system sort of works together. And you say, well, it'd be nice to add a light over here and a light over here. But, we try to
So it's not random. I mean, you're starting with a base and then you're working your way out.
Right. And, lighting looks really good at night, and especially with our long nights, which, I think.
Yeah, it was dark at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so.
Yeah, I think this year we have 13 and a half hours of darkness on the longest day of the year.
So those lights are going to be important?
For the darkest day of the year. So yeah, you need that. And you want to create those elements of ground lighting, uplighting on trees, and uplighting on houses, because that's what creates a really nice lighting system.
Well, that's the lighting that when you're saying the uplighting is when you're kind of driving through a neighborhood and the light, it's kind of going up the facade of the house versus a spotlight like it's going downward. So everything is kind of encompassed in that light.
Right.
This is like just showing off certain features of it.
Right. We want to show off those features, and this time of year when we get a little bit of snow, a lighting system that's done well looks really, really nice right now. I like doing lighting, and like we said, when we do our projects at Greenscapes, we want to highlight the landscape we put in, and the lighting is sort of the icing.
And that's not something that you farm out, because a lot of times when you call a landscape person, that they might do, they might have a tree farm that's theirs, and then they sub out the lighting or sub out to somebody else for different pieces. That's all in one house, right?
Right. Yeah, we take care of the lighting. It's the lighting is a lot easier now with LED fixtures. When we used to use incandescent and halogen fixtures, there was a lot more math involved and how you put the lights together because of the wattage and the voltage drop over long distances. The LEDs are a lot simpler because of the way the diode works. It's either off or on. Now you could, in theory, wire all of them in one line and just chain them all together like a giant extension cord. It's not the best way for maintenance and if something happens to the system.
Well, it's kind of like Christmas tree lights, right?
Right.
I mean, if one bulb goes out, you got to figure out in that chain what went wrong.
So that's kind of, we want to avoid that, because if the wire gets nicked somewhere or, something happens to it, if it's all in one loop, then you have a lot of time figuring it out.
Is it more expensive to do it individually versus having them all wired together?
No, it's the same. Okay. But it's just,
I don't mean the cost of the actual lighting. I meant when you're looking at the electrical output. I keep hearing this on Sunday dinner conversations, the electricity cost, and it's mainly because someone who's 92 years old keeps saying how their electricity is going up. When I'm looking at that, if I'm a consumer, I'm trying to figure out, okay, it's worth putting this lighting in because it highlights everything, but how much is it costing me to run it?
And that's the other thing with the LED systems now. It's like leaving your light on in your house, just a regular overhead light. So think of it in that aspect. Okay. It's not like I wouldn't say the maintenance cost of a lighting system would be something to know, but like the other projects with the that we talked about with the heated walkways and stuff, there's hundreds of dollars of cost, increase there for a lighting system at your home, $10 a month, depending on how much you run it. It's a
But
yeah.
I mean, it's cheap, but I think that's still something that comes up if someone's looking at a project. You guys would know the cost,
right.
you know. What about solar lighting? You ever get into that?
Yeah, no. Solar lighting, it's kind of weird. It casts light, but not illumination. So
But you've seen those big panels. There's a neighborhood in New Albany where this is the first time I ever saw solar panels here. And it literally looks like the movie Tron at the top of this thing. There's all these grids on the top. I wanted to ask that guy so many times, like, what is your electricity?
Oh, when you talk about big solar panels like
Yeah.
that, they actually, usually it's a net zero, as far as how much your electric bill is. And at some point, they will put electricity back into the system and get a credit from the electric company.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So, are you getting... In California, I know they give you an incentive, but the sun is also out a lot more. I mean, here in Columbus, we get about 9 days of sun, and the rest of the time it's doom and gloom. So I don't know if those
Right.
panels do anything. But in California, I see these tax credits if you'll put that on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think originally this guy is thinking, hey, I'm going to save a bunch of money on my electricity. I still see that guy's running his weed whacker out there, and he's not using solar panels to do it.
Right, but they're helpful. They do work really well, and in some of those other climates, they have been changing the rules and regulations of how electric companies bill people, because more people are doing it, and so they have all the line costs, and then line maintenance, and they're depending on you paying $200 a month. But if you're creating all of your own electricity now, you're not paying that anymore.
Right.
But they still had to do all the line work, so they're changing some of the fee structures.
There's some accountant out there that's having a hell of a time with it.
Right.
Let's take a break right here. You're listening to Down the Garden Path, and we'll be right back. That was more of a question for me, the solar panel thing, because I saw like an hour. Why did you save a bunch of fucking money?
But you got to pay to put it in, and I don't think all those tax credits are there anymore.
Well, I think it's tax credits if a neighborhood, if there's an incentive, you just do it on your own. People are like,
You used to get tax credits for that.
right, but I'm saying there's not enough people. Like, can you imagine the cost of putting those things in? They're not cheap.
They're not cheap, but they're a lot more efficient now. Did you find the Grumpy Cat Christmas yet?
Found it, but I haven't watched it yet.
It's not on Netflix then?
No, we looked it up. You have to have the Lifetime movie online thing to watch it on Amazon, I think.
I have Amazon Prime.
But you can't. You have to have the Lifetime.
What does that mean? The lifetime membership?
Like Lifetime movies, the Lifetime Network.
Oh, I thought you meant you could never cancel Amazon.
So you have to have the Lifetime Network thing to watch it. My daughter was upset.
Well, you're a poor father. You know that.
Well, I'm not watching Lifetime movies.
Yeah, you are. You wear those big fuzzy socks. All right. I wanna
They're all
cover
the same.
Yeah. Woman thinks she meets the perfect guy. That guy murders her. Her friend tries to solve the crime. I haven't seen them all, but the commercials look great. All right. I can come back here in a second. I just want to look at this. Okay. Why don't you bring us back?
Welcome back to Down the Garden Path. Down the Garden Path, as always, is presented to you by Greenscapes Landscape Company. If you ever have a question about your home or would like to send a question in to the show for us to answer, please call the office at 614-837-1869 or email us at info@greenscapes.net. Today with Michael Morris, we're talking about winter. We talked about
Your designs for winter,
designs
not
for
just winter in general.
And
if you just tuned in and you think we're just talking about snow, we haven't really touched on that yet.
we talked about lighting and how important that is, and some of the design aspects we talk about for winter. One thing we didn't talk about was, we do a lot of outdoor grilling stations and grill islands.
Yeah, the big green egg.
The big green egg.
I like that conversation.
So, a question that we always ask people when we're doing a design for a client is, how important is it for you to have accessibility to your grill structure during the wintertime? Because some people, of course, love to grill all year long, so to put the grill somewhere a little bit farther away, they got to shovel it out. That may be annoying. So when we deal with our clients at Greenscapes, we want to try to know that and position things so if they love grilling and they're going to grill all year, we can put it somewhere that's close to them.
And I think that you should point out the difference between the grill that's permanently there or the fire pit aspect, because I know fire pits are a big thing, but a fire pit you can move, correct?
Well, there's different types. There's the built-in ones we do. You can do a built-in that's powered by wood, powered by gas, or you can do, sometimes on a smaller patio, we recommend for the client to buy the movable fire pit pans for the structure, so they can have the fire, move it in and out as they need it, depending on how much space they have.
But if someone's building a deck, well, I guess let's back up. If someone doesn't have a deck, it's easier to build it into the deck. If someone has one already and says, I want a fire pit built in, what do they have to do to get that done?
It depends
because it has to be sunk in, right?
Well, it has to, you don't just want to set it, like if you had a concrete patio or a paver patio, you just don't want to set it right on top. You need to remove that material, build it down, and you don't want to bury it because it still needs to have oxygen for the fire.
What is it, like 4 to 6 inches deep?
Yeah, usually you're pretty shallow, but you want to put it down in the ground slightly. But that's a question we want to ask is, what's your view, what's your goal of this? And if they have a paver patio and say we want to put it here, you can pull up the pavers, build the ring, and then put the pavers back around it. Because you have to think about it, if you put it just right on top of the patio, you'll have a fire, you have ash, you have rain, and then the water's going to seep out from underneath it, and you'll have all these nice black lines all over your patio.
What do you see more of? You see people that like the permanent grill or the fire pit? The fire pit, I see a lot of pictures in magazines, and when when we're researching stuff for this show, I see that's an option, but I don't know how many people actually use that versus using the grill structure.
The fire pit is nice because it's a conversation place. You're sitting, you have a fire, sit around it, talk, maybe have a drink.
2, 3, whatever.
Yeah. Maybe
have a long day.
Yeah, depending on how your day went. But it's a good place to have a conversation. The grill island is more of a structure.
It's like a
for use. It's
right.
got a use. It's just, you're going to cook there. And people aren't just going to open the grill and stand around and just chat.
It's not like those Miller Lite commercials where like 6 guys just stand around and they just talk.
Yeah, I don't think that really
that's
happens.
Not real. That's just advertising. So when people come to you and they say they want to make the most out of their deck or their patio, do they kind of like give me the ins and outs, kind of like what you just did, or is it which one is best for resale value?
All those things help for resale value because it makes your house unique. Just because you spent $50,000 in your backyard, you may not be able just to say, well, we're going to slap $50,000 more on our house.
Well, because it is built the way you want it versus the way someone's going to buy it.
Right.
It's your taste versus theirs.
And you still have the market around it. So, if you have a nice house, you just can't charge more because the neighborhood will still only support so much. But it does help. The real big thing is a well laid out landscape that's really thought out. And people say, man, this is really nice. They'll remember that. And it'll make it easier for your house to sell. You may not get every penny back out of it, but people will remember that it was nice. And people don't, when they're looking at houses, they may not remember all the nice things, but they're really going to remember the negative things. So if you have a poor patio that's too small and overgrown with plants, they're going to remember that. They're like, man, we got to do something with that. That's unusable. But if you have a nice laid out patio, and let's just say it's a nice flat patio, no fire pit, nice planting around it, very simple, they're going to be kind of indifferent about it, but they're not going to remember it as a negative. And that's what we want to look at.
There's only a couple minutes left today, but what you just made me think of something. What is the worst thing someone's asked you to put as a patio or paver feature? Like, what was the one thing you just said, this is absolutely insane, like, why would we put this together?
I can't think of anything too bad. I can think of a fire pit we put on a concrete patio. And that's why I talked about the streaking, and we discussed it and went over with the client. And
you told him the drawbacks.
I definitely told him the drawbacks because I did not want to do it. I was not in favor of it. And that was, it's kind of difficult to be a designer in what we do because we want to make sure everything we do is safe and no one's going to get hurt and it's thought out well. But in the end, it's still their decision. So we went through the pros and cons, and there was a lot more cons than pros, and they said, nope, that's fine. This is what we're going to do. And we did it, and they were happy, and they were content. I was not content, but that ultimately that was the vision for their house, and that's what they wanted. And
they were cool with it. So
they were fine.
They never came back to you and said, let's rip this thing up.
Nope, they were fine with it, and it's still there today. That was 6 years ago that went in.
It seems like you said that like you check on it just to see if it's gone. Like, do you drive by there enough?
I do that kind of thing.
Well, I know you said that before in other projects that you liked. And somebody didn't keep it up. If you saw a project that you don't like, that's got to be like an eyesore for you personally.
It is.
Because you've designed it and you spent the time and you had to be there on the build. At some point, it's got to be frustrating because you're like, there could have been so much more.
Right. And it is, but it goes back to as long as it's safe and it's not going to hurt anything or burn the house down. There was a designer we used to work with, and he gave us the example of Mrs. Smith comes to us and says, I'd like some pink flamingos in my front yard. And then you say, Mrs. Smith, here are the reasons why we shouldn't put pink flamingos in your front yard. It's going to look bad. The neighbors are going to be upset. No one does this. You go down the list. And then she says, I really want pink flamingos in my front yard. And then what's your next question?
When can we start?
How big and how many would you like?
Yeah.
So at some point, if it's safe, it's not hurting anybody, and it's still your house. It's not my house.
I was just curious about that because, we've talked about so many positive things about planning. I just know what you do as a designer when someone comes back to you and goes, I know this doesn't make any sense, but this is what I want. At the end of the day, you can just advise them. If they don't like the advice, you can build for them.
It's just advice. So, like I said, if someone wants to put a tree in the wrong spot, we want to put this big tree close to the house, there we're going to say, you can't do that. That you can't do that. But if they say, we want to do this, and you're like, well, it's not the best idea, but...
You've got a real poker face, because you should see the way you look right now telling me about, this is not the best idea. I can imagine what that looks like.
In the fall, we were working with somebody, and they had something that needed to be fixed. They had a walkway that needed to be fixed, and because they didn't want to fix the walkway, there was a problem with the patio we were proposing. It was causing a problem with how everything meshed together, and it came down to, I'm not going to do this project without you doing this project. And I said, this is something because it affects your house. It affects the water draining to your house that we as a company will not do what you've asked for because it's going to cause substantial problems later. Right. And we just said, no, we're not doing that. But it's not the situation where, they wanted this tree or this plant. You're like, well, that's not the best plant, and here's what can happen, and they accept the responsibilities. That's a plant can be changed. If it dies in 5 years, we can come and replace, change it out to something else. But there's always that back and forth a little bit.
I just want to get a little real world example before we left for the week. But we are out of time, so if you want to leave anybody, how can they contact Greenscapes?
As always, the phone line is always open, 614-837-1869, and emails at info@greenscapes.net. We want to thank all of our loyal listeners for being with us today, and please catch us next week for another exciting edition of Down the Garden Path.